Hey everyone, good evening. My name is Dan McCamblau, and I'm the co-chair of the Duke Jewish Alumni Network, also known as DJAN. I'm so pleased to see so many familiar faces and some new ones here tonight for the final event in the academic year's Duke Jewish Alumni Network Book Club series, which is hosted by DJAN, Jewish Life at Duke, and the Jewish Book Council, Duke Libraries, and Duke Lifelong Learning. Before I pass it off, I want to tell you a little bit about DJAN, Duke's Jewish Alumni Affinity Group, which launched almost 3 years ago now in September 2022. The mission of the Duke Jewish Alumni Network is to ensure that the Jewish community at Duke remains strong past graduation. DJAN, an affiliate of Jewish Life at Duke, engages and connects Jewish alumni through opportunities to interact with peers, foster Jewish identity, and build a network of Duke Jewish alumni for social and professional connections. DJAN welcomes alumni, students, faculty, staff, and friends of Duke. If you are a Jewish alum, you're automatically a member of DJAN. You can visit the Duke Alumni Network at alumni.duke.edu and find the DJAN page to learn more or join our affinity group. We're looking for volunteers interested in joining our programming and marketing committees, so look out for additional information. Now I'd like to introduce our facilitator, Dr. Mohamed Noor. Dr. Noor is Duke's Executive Vice Provost, a role to which he was appointed in July of 2024. A professor of biology, Dr. Noor served as interim vice provost for academic affairs from February 2023 through June 2024, interim dean of Trinity College from July 2022 through January 2023, and as dean of natural sciences within Trinity College from 2019 to 2023. Dr. Noor joined the Department of Biology in 2005, serving as its chair from 2013 to 2017. He's a recipient of the Darwin Wallace Medal, given by the Linnean Society of London in recognition of those who have made major advances in evolutionary biology, and he's been awarded a number of Duke Teaching and Mentoring Awards. He has also served as president of the American Genetic Association, president of the Society of the Study of Evolution, and member of the board of directors for the Genetic Society of America. Dr. Noor has published 2 books, including Live Long and Evolve: What Star Trek Can Teach Us About Evolution, Genetics, and Life of Other Worlds, an entertaining introduction to genetics and evolutionary concepts through the lenses of popular science fiction television show. Finally, and particularly relevant tonight, Dr. Noor has served as a science consultant for the Star Trek universe, having consulted on multiple seasons of Star Trek Discovery. Dr. Noor, on behalf of DJAN, thank you so much for facilitating tonight's conversation.
Thank you so much, and it's an honor to be here. Thank you to everybody for coming, and I'm so pleased to be here on the Zoom tonight to discuss with you The Most Human. Before we dive in tonight, let me introduce the author a bit. Adam Nimoy is the son of Leonard and Sandra Zoberblatt Nimoy. He attended UC Berkeley, followed by Loyola Law School. After 7 years of practicing entertainment law, Adam left his life as an attorney to follow his passion of making films. After directing 45 hours of network television, Adam's career plummeted due in large part to drug and alcohol addiction, topic we'll be discussing tonight as it's central to his memoir. On January 1st, 2004, Adam entered a 12-step recovery, a New Year's resolution he knew he had to keep. For 8 years, he taught writing, directing, and acting at the New York Film Academy and taught filmmaking at the Beit Shova, an addiction treatment center, where today he sits on the board of directors. In 2016, Adam directed For the Love of Spock, a wonderful documentary about his father and Mr. Spock. And in 2024, he published The Most Human, the memoir about his relationship with his father and Mr. Spock, which we are discussing here tonight. So please join me in welcoming the author, artist, and advocate, Adam Nimoy. Welcome, Adam.
Hello. Shalom.
Hello. Welcome for being here. I'll start off with a few questions. Before this book, you wrote another book called My Wonderful Miserable Life in 2008. And you also directed the documentary For the Love of Spock, which I mentioned came out in 2016 and is referenced in this book, both of which had overlapping themes with this book. When did you know you wanted to write this book in relation to those projects? And do those projects inspire you to come back with this deeper dive on your relationships and updates on what's happened since?
Well, first of all, just for clarification, the first book was actually entitled My Incredibly Wonderful Miserable Life. Oh, I just happen to have a copy right here. Now out of print. Thankfully out of print. So yeah, and in that book, I talk about my relationship with my dad, some of the challenges of my relationship, and my life in recovery. The reason why I take the deep dive in this book about our relationship and how recovery was instrumental in allowing us to reconcile with one another, it had to really do with, I touch on the subject also in the Spock documentary, For the Love of Spock, which we produced 9 years ago now. The fact is, Mohammed, I'm a person in recovery. I have 21 years of sobriety, but I'm in recovery, and as such, I continue to attend 12-step meetings. And when I'm asked to speak at these meetings, it's usually anonymously. People don't know that I'm the son of Leonard Nimoy, and I often share this story of how I had so much difficulty with my dad, how alcoholism on his side and pot addiction on my side further complicated our relationship, and how it was through the miracle of 12-step recovery that we were able to reconcile. And when I share that story, again anonymously with these groups of people, either in AA meetings or in Al-Anon meetings, people get really it resonates with people. I mean, most people have some sort of family dysfunction going on that they're trying to figure out how to deal with. And they get inspired by my story. And many times people have come up to me after the meetings and say things like, I'm going to call my mom or my dad tonight, or a brother or sister, because they feel like they have hope, because sometimes it works. The tools of recovery can be very helpful in this respect. So it's just that, that happens so often, and it felt like, okay, I touched on a little bit in the first book, and we've kind of skimmed the surface in the documentary. Now really felt like the right time to do the deep dive and really go into more specifics about what happened.
Awesome. Thank you. A great answer. So I loved reading your book. I thought it was very well written. It was very engaging. I especially loved the structure of the very short stories interspersed across your life. Um, the family struggles in particular, both with your father and with your children, were especially moving for me. Uh, Also, the last few sections, of course, with Martha's passing and your father's passing, and you're coming to a better place with your father, those were heavy and heartwarming. So let me ask you about some overarching themes that came out throughout the book. So the first question is, you talk about various Jewish life experiences, both with and without your father. You reference a higher power, you say HP several times. You cite the Torah and stories of Abraham and his family many times. And you conclude, of course, with the book of Jonah. Can you describe your relationship with and your feelings toward your faith and the various phases you went through with that across the span of your life so far?
Oh, in a minute or less.
Sure.
Uh, yeah. I mean, look, Judaism and the Jewish tradition was a big part of my family. I mean, my grandparents on both sides were fairly Orthodox, and my parents rebelled against that a little bit. They were much more reformist, I would say, but we attended, services regularly, and we celebrated the Jewish holidays regularly together. That had a big influence on me. I just love the Jewish tradition. I love studying Torah. I mean, I would say, my dad was very much culturally invested in Judaism. I mean, live long and prosper is based on the priestly blessing on Yom Kippur, because it represents Shaddai, the Hebrew letter Shin for Shaddai, the Almighty. So, my dad has narrated a number of Isaac Bashevis Singer's stories. I mean, he's very highly identified with the Jewish community. However, I would not say he was necessarily a religious person. I did much more the deep dive in that respect than he did. I've been studying Torah with the rabbi who co-founded Beit Teshuvah. It's a residential addiction treatment center. I mean, I've been studying Torah with him and other other aspects of Jewish literature for 10 years now. It's enlightening, it's enriching, and I start the book off with the book of Jonah, because the story of the Akedah, the binding of Isaac, because they were very relevant to the theme. I mean, with my dad, in terms of Abraham, his willingness to sacrifice his son kind of resonated with me, because I felt that way with my dad. It was like, the guy, I had so much conflict with him. And sometimes it was like, why are you so mad at me? And the fact is that we have 3,000 years of this tradition of dysfunctional relationships between fathers and sons. And it's not just Abraham and Isaac, it's Isaac and Jacob and his 12 sons. So, it brings on more meaning. Torah just speaks to us through the ages, and it's so relevant and it's so pertinent. And I just felt like it gave another level, it shined another light, it gave another perspective on the struggle I had with my dad, that I'm not alone. This has been going on for thousands of years. And by the same token, the Book of Jonah I talk about in the book because my dad read Book of Jonah every year on Yom Kippur at our synagogue. My dad would get up and read word for word the Book of Jonah. And it was also, and then I was reading it, as I succeeded him, and I was drashing about it. And Book of Jonah has a lot to do with recovery. It's about a guy who has resentment towards the people of Nineveh, to the very end, to the point where he just wants to kill himself, that the city is spared, that these people who are the arch enemies of the Jews were spared by God because they engaged in teshuvah, in repentance. So these all had resonated with everything I'm talking about in terms of my own recovery, my relationship with my dad, and it just seemed to add a whole other dimension to the story.
I love that answer. That's great. Thank you. So something I appreciate in your book was the repeated associations of people in your life with specific items. So for example, you often mentioned your mother in the context of chocolate. You mentioned Jonah with his guitar and wanting to show you a new riff. And I like this because these repeated associations gave like a sense of a theme for the people in your life and how you felt about them. For yourself and your father, though, you often refer back to substance abuse rather than an item. So here's a fun question for you. If I may, and separate from any connections to substance abuse, what do you think would be the items for you both and why?
Well, I mean, it's interesting you kind of glommed onto that moment. This is unique in terms of the various discussion sections I've had about the book. So kudos to you for that. So the thing is that, yeah, I mean, Jonah is very closely associated with things. Things are important. We say in filmmaking that things are characters in the story, and you have to treat them appropriately and give them their due and make sure you feature them. With my mom, it was the things for her were coffee, chocolates, and newspapers, and books. Those were things that she had fetishes about. They're things that are very close to her. I would say with my daughter Maddie, she always had a pen in her hand, not because she was a writer, but because she was a good student and wanted to get her homework done. So that was always, a part, and her phone, those two items. With me, I do talk a lot about the house situation, the houses we lived in, and the importance of a home and a house to make it a home, and maintaining houses, and what I did with my mother's house when she passed away. We had to renovate the whole thing because it was just in such disrepair. And to honor that what that house had done that house was purchased by Star Trek money. So, and we'd been there for 40 years. So I needed to really honor that by renovating that house. The same was true with the house that I bought with Martha, my second wife. And, and so these things, that would be that was one of my fetishes, I would say. With my dad, I never talked about it. I did a little bit allude to this, but a camera was something that he was quite attached to. I talked about the fact that he was, engaged in photography since he was a young boy, and he had a dark room at our house, and, having a camera in his hands at all times was something that was very important to my dad.
I love that. Actually, we have a question from somebody here in the room saying, looking back now, is there anything you wished you had asked your dad that you never got the chance to ask?
Really, no. Maybe more about the family history. That would have been something, because I'm looking at family trees now of the Nimoy family and what he remembered, and in terms of his experience with those that came over. I think it would have been more interesting. Listen, I was always very interested in his life and his background. This is why, I did a lot of deep diving with him in terms of maybe a little bit more about the struggle coming to LA as a teenager, but we talked about a lot of this stuff. The trajectory of his life was fascinating. He really is a rags to riches story, which is the American story, and I try to honor that by making this other documentary with him about Leonard Nimoy's Boston, where we went back into, to his hometown, and talked about what his life was like growing up there, and try to honor the trajectory of how far he had come, to the point where, he's, the obscurity of being raised in an immigrant neighborhood with Ukrainian, immigrant parents. and then going to Hollywood against his parents' wishes. I mean, these are things that we talked about a lot and that I honor in the book and that I honored with that documentary. It's just such a phenomenal story. And that is one of the things that I am very clear about in the book, because although I do reveal some unfortunate episodes with my dad, I'm also very careful to show how much I revered him and respected him and was very proud of him.
That's amazing. So we have another question from somebody here in the room on the other side now. How do your kids feel about the book that you wrote, since you do write a lot about them in the book?
Yeah. Well, I read it. I read it through with them. It's not the kind of situation where you could send them a PDF and say, "Oh, read this and tell me if there's anything in it you know what I'm saying, you're upset about," because they're not. We were just talking about that before. They're not going to read my stuff. I mean, it's hard to get people to read this stuff. I mean, I have to force myself to keep reading, but I do, because I really love good stories. What I did with the family was I had to sit down with them and read to them the passages in which they appear. My son Jonah had some problems with a couple of things in there. I just took it out. My daughter Maddie was okay with all of it. It was my ex-wife who had a big issue. There's an episode in the book where after we had split up, I had gone back to the house and we had an argument which spilled out onto the street, and there happened to be some police in the neighborhood taking a burglary report, and they came over to see what was up, and Nancy, there were two cops. One went to Nancy, my ex-wife, and one went over to talk to me. And Nancy right away started mouthing off to this cop. And I read to her what she said to him, and she said, "Wait a minute, wait a second. I said a lot more to that cop than what you have in there, and I want it in there." So I said, "Oh, okay, great." And I got my laptop out and I started typing. It's like, what else did you tell him? Because it just makes for good, conflict, good drama. Other than that, my sister had some reservation about something, and I just took it out. The fact of the matter is, look, I was in an editing class, and the teacher said, if you're writing a memoir and you don't piss off somebody in your family, you've not written a very good book.
That's a great quote. Though I do appreciate how consultative you were anyway. That's awesome. Another question from the chat. As someone caring, this is this person reading it, as someone caring for a recently very ill spouse, I was touched by your care of Martha when she was terminal. How were you able to have the strength to stay sober during that period?
Well, yeah, at that point, sobriety was not a real problem for me. I mean, I had other issues. I've got other, emotional relapses, what I have to work on. My attitude, my temper, and Mohammed, is that like the Klingon, flag behind you? I was just like, well, what is that, man?
This one over here?
Yeah.
Mirror Universe from original series.
Oh, okay, right,
Yeah.
right, okay, from Mirror, Mirror, okay. Uh, no, I mean, the thing with Martha is so interesting is that I'm really grateful I was not an opioid addict, because I had everything. I mean, there's a pharmacy here in LA, and they cater to cancer patients in pain, and I had everything to administer to her. But it was never an issue for me at all, really, because I just was done with I'm the run-of-the-mill pothead, and I was never that into alcohol to begin with. So, it was just the self-care was what I had to really be mindful of, which is going to support groups, going to 12-step meetings, these kind of things of exercising regularly and getting out. My dad was very helpful with that. He took me to Shabbat services at Beit Teshuvah on Friday nights to give me a break. I mean, that's where I had to really watch my eating properly, getting the rest I needed. Because when you're caring for somebody, it's the caretaker besides the patient that it's really, very challenging and difficult. I mean, obviously not the same that as is the person who's sick with the disease, but the self-care was the most challenging part for me. I had never had any feeling of any need to drink or use to help me through that period.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Yeah, that was definitely a tough section. I have one, since you asked about the flag here, let me ask you a question about Star Trek. You have an interesting relationship with the franchise that, a lot of people would have distanced themselves from voluntary engagements after so much formal association as a child family member. But you mentioned, for instance, that you and Nancy would watch Star Trek reruns together in the evenings. Can you describe your personal feelings towards the franchise and whether or how they were influenced either by your relationship with your father or by your own interactions across the span of your life? Ah, I love it.
This is my relationship to Star Trek. It's another one of my favorites. This I love.
I love that he's black and white too.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I love Star Trek. I don't have a problem with Star Trek. Baseball's been very good to me. Star Trek's been very good to me. I love Star Trek. I mean, come on, it's a freaking awesome series. That was,
Obviously, I agree.
yeah, Star Trek was never the problem. I mean, not at all. I mean, the problem was, I had a dad who was very involved in his career, and that crosses all careers. I had a lot of people come up to me after these 12-step meetings and like, oh yeah, my dad was a star in the stock brokerage trade, or my dad was a star attorney in the city of LA or in Manhattan. I mean, and a workaholic and very difficult and judgmental and critical. I mean, a lot, it just doesn't matter. I mean, the only difference in my story is my dad happened to be loved and adored by millions of people all over the world. But the fact is, I'm still I'm still basking in the afterglow of this love fest for Leonard and Star Trek and Spock. I mean, people everywhere, all over the world, it's just still happening everywhere, and it's delightful, really. People are so happy to meet me. I mean, I just went to a fundraiser. I'm going to reveal some political, leaning here for Cory Booker, and he's a Trek fanatic, and it's like, I got there, and the campaign manager like grabbed me by the arm and said, "Cory wants to meet you." Like, why? What for? I mean, there were other heavyweights there who gave a lot of money to host this event, but he wanted to meet me because he's a Trek fanatic. I mean, it's just everywhere, and it's wonderful. It is a positive vision of the future. Spock is the ultimate outsider. I mean, there's so much about Star Trek that resonates across almost 60 years now. And I love it. I love, walking the streets of Barcelona and then seeing this painting of Spock in a matador outfit. I mean, stuff like that just blows my mind. It just does. My son Jonah was just telling me he was in a bar and there was, some news program droning on, and he asked the bartender to change the channel. Boom! It went right to Leonard and Nichelle in the Man Trap when they're having that exchange about the fact that there are no moons and there's nothing romantic about Vulcan. I mean, it's just freaking everywhere, and I think it's fabulous.
I love that. That's a great answer. So another question from the chat. You didn't provide a lot of detail about your dad's alcoholism. With a disclaimer that the person who wrote the question hasn't yet finished the book, it seemed that he poured himself a drink or two after work to unwind or relax after his long, stressful work days. That didn't strike me as what one might consider or characterize as hardcore alcoholism. Was there more to it than that, or was that interpretation incorrect?
No, when you pour yourself a drink every night after work, and then on the weekends you just keep pouring. No, my dad was really qualified as an alcoholic, and admittedly so. In an interview with none other than Bill Shatner, the Mind Meld interview, he talked a lot about his alcoholism, and no, he was he really fit the definition perfectly, and it just it just made things worse between the two of us, I think. But so did my addiction. Didn't help either. I mean, look, when you start using or drinking, you're not really developing any in terms of emotional maturity. This is the big reason why I'm still in 12-step recovery. I'm still trying to grow up 20 years later. I mean, you're in arrested development. Why? Because you're using substances to deal with the challenges of life, and you're not growing, you're not maturing, you're not developing tools to deal with these challenges. You're just numbing yourself and checking out. So, my dad did that for decades, and so did I. And that's that was, and I talk a lot about the fact that we just had very different, backgrounds growing up, very, very different. Him being the son of these Russian immigrants. I mean, I say Rush, they consider themselves Russian, even though they were from Ukraine, but back then it was all Russia. So, that alone was really what doomed us from the start. The fact that I was born in sunny Southern California and not during the Depression, and he was the opposite. So, it's just that the substance between us, the abuse, the using to deal with our problems made, of dealing with life, made our interpersonal problems even worse than they were already set out to be.
Thank you for that. So another question from the chat, and I'm just reading the quote. I took away from your memoir that you have a commitment to creativity. Your career path seems to have been deeply creative. Maybe not the stint as an attorney. What feeds your creativity these days?
Well, I mean, that's what I found out about practicing law. There's just so little creativity. I mean, there is some, but it's like, how do you structure the deal? And it's just so, it's interesting and it can be challenging about how to achieve objectives, and make everybody a win-win situation when you're a transactional entertainment attorney. I mean, usually you're just at odds with the studio and just trying to battle with them. And it's just not that much fun. Or the recording company, the record company. This is why I left the practice of law. I wanted to do something more creative. I mean, I wanted to do something that Leonard Nimoy could not do, and that's why I went to law school. Leonard Nimoy simply could not go to law school. He's a man of many talents and a very intelligent man for how incredibly undereducated he was. Very intelligent. I mean, he can crunch numbers like nobody's business. I mean, he knew business. I learned a lot from him about finance. But I wanted to do something that he couldn't do, which is why I went into the law. But then I just wanted to do what he was doing, which was storytelling and being creative, and which is why I went into the TV industry. I mean, now, I'm putting together like a photography exhibit. I'm writing my next book. I'm going to do another documentary. I'm just like Leonard. Leonard was like into photography, his recording career, his poetry books. Leonard was always trying to find ways to express himself artistically. I'm no different than him in that respect. And I'm trying to but what I learned from him is you got to focus and finish. You can do all these different things, but it's really important to see them through to fruition. And that's the challenge that I have to deal with.
Love that. Thank you. That's great. It's very inspiring too to hear that. There was a question. I'm actually going to reword the question just slightly. What was your dad's off-screen friendship like with some of the original series cast members, especially later in life?
Well, it was good with most of them. He had a lot of, respect for them and was and watched out for them. We talked about this in the documentary about when they came up with the animated series in the 70s and they were not going to hire the whole cast back. He was like, I'm not going to do it, if you're not going to hire more people. So that said a lot about my dad. He had good working relationships with them. On the subject of Bill Shatner, however,
that was the piece I skipped.
That was the most complicated, I think, relationship because you have two Jewish boys who are were born 4 days apart from one another and are very competitive, and they had problems, but the competitive spirit made for incredible camaraderie, chemistry when that camera was rolling. That's the amazing part of it. And later in life, they did have a close, loving friendship. I talk in the book about the fact that my dad one day said to my sister and myself that Bill Shatner was his best friend. And we were like, WTF? Could you say that again? And here's the quote, Mohammed. This is it. This is what my dad said. He goes, yeah, Bill Shatner's my best friend. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? You've been complaining about him for 30 years. That's what's wrong with that. It's bizarre. But they did have a good relationship for a while. They just couldn't sustain it, unfortunately.
Totally fair. So this one's kind of a tough question. You said you felt like you were competing with your dad. Does your son Jonah feel like he has to compete with you? And do you think the parent-child relationship naturally just always goes that way?
Yeah, I never felt competitive with Leonard. I mean, how do you compete with a pop culture icon? That's absurd. It's the other way around. And this was pointed out to me by my sister, which I thought was absurd. But my dad was very competitive, even with me. Even my small, incremental accomplishments. I had some difficulty with him about. I never had the competitive spirit. I mean, this is why it's like I didn't care what ranking I had in law school. I didn't give a shit, and I should have because it dictates, what kind of a job you're going to get. I just didn't never felt that way about these things. I just didn't have that kind of a spirit. I don't compete with Jonah. He doesn't compete with me. He's his own man. He does his own thing. And he does it well. Jonah is like my dad. I mean, like my dad, he was a nightmare in academia. My son, it was absurd. I couldn't get him to do any homework. I'm the one who turned him on to music, drums and guitar. I'm the one who turned him on to The Offspring, the band that he's been, touring with for the past 8 years. They were just on Jimmy Kimmel last night. I stayed up till 12:30 to what? It's like he told me it was 11:30, but no, it's 12:30 when they went on. Way past my bedtime. I'm really proud of what he's accomplished. And we have arguments. He just loves to argue, and that we have to deal with, the conflict of that. But in terms of competition, no. I try to honor him as best I can, and I do my own thing. And I think we've been pretty successful at it. And when there was, at the end of my dad's life, there was a real equilibrium between all of us. My dad saw in Jonah, that he was a true artist, just like himself. He saw himself in Jonah. And I saw this happen between them. It was an amazing moment where they really saw each other in a way that my dad's own parents could not see in him. They didn't understand what it meant to be an artist. And in ways that my dad oftentimes could not see in me. He just couldn't accept me for what I was because I was so different from him. And that was the source of a lot of our conflict until later in life when he was just willing to give up like I was and let go of the resentment and just get on with our lives and learn, and enjoy each other and love each other. That's the beauty. But that equilibrium can be very complicated to maintain.
Totally hear you. I really enjoyed actually the dynamics that you described in the book when your dad was actually interacting with your kids. Like I can't remember whether it was with your son or your daughter, but one of them you brought your dad over and they're like, "Oh, you brought in the big guns." I love that.
Yeah, you had to deal with Jonah when when I had some issues with him. But even my daughter Maddie, she's a vice president of production at Paramount, where they made all things Star Trek. My granddaughter, my 9-month-old granddaughter, is at daycare at their facility at Paramount down the street from the sound stages where they shot the original series. I mean, it's bizarre. Talk about full circle. It resonates. It resonates.
That's great. Well, I love the intergenerational aspect. So another question in the chat, why did you decide to tell your story out of order with each chapter jumping back and forth in time versus just a linear format from start to finish?
Just usually it's more interesting. I had a book editor who helped me write the book. Being chronological sometimes can be very boring and very, episodic, as my dad would say. Then this happened, then that happened. Sometimes, it's just a writing technique. And when I hired this woman in New York, I was like, make me a better writer, and we talked a lot about structure and a lot about what to leave on the editing room floor, what needed to be expanded on, deeper dive into things, and where we could jump around, because it really helps pump up the drama of the thematic elements of each story. If you do things that way, instead of just staying, we're not looking for grape juice. I read this like in an article many years ago in the LA Times. We're looking for fine wine in memoirs stories. And grape juice is, just a journal entry. This happened, this happened, this happened, and then this happened. Good stories are just not told that way.
Wholeheartedly agree with you. Was there a particular story in the book that was incredibly hard to write, where you actually debated whether to put it in there, or vice versa, one that was especially cathartic, where you wrote it like, yes, I'm so happy to get this out there?
Well, I mean, a lot of the stuff where I'm really honest about some of the stuff that my dad pulled, that was where I had to be very careful. Look, this is the conundrum of the book, is that I'm trying to be honest and vulnerable, about what I'm putting, and spilling blood on the page. That's another, writer's, mantra. You want to spill blood on the page because you want to keep the reader reading and make it interesting. At the same time, I have to be very careful. I'm dealing with a man who's just loved by millions of fans, and they don't want to read Mommy Dearest. They don't want, this is not dirty laundry, blame game, judging, criticizing. I have to be very, very careful about what I tell, how much I tell. And this is where that editor would really help me to say, this is enough, or you need more here. You need to be honest about what happened. And at the same time, finding ways to take the curse off some of my dad's character defects. And I say this at a lot of the discussion sections I have and the presentations I make. Leonard Nimoy is an amazing human being, a true Renaissance man. He could do anything. Artistically, he was so incredibly creative. This is a guy who could build anything, and he knew a lot. He's just amazing, man. I gave him a toolkit for Father's Day once, and it just blew his mind because it just turned him on. He just loves tinkering. He can do anything, but on the subject of parenting, challenged. The man was challenged. And that's what I was trying to say in the book without taking away from all the other great inspirational characteristics of this incredible, dynamic human being that inspired so many, including myself.
That makes total sense. So here's a not small question for you. It said, you speak on growing up emotionally, choosing your career, then shifting towards creativity instead, and how the Hebrew Bible stories are helpful for understanding your life and your family. What then do you think the meaning of your life is? Nice, easy one there for you. Softball.
Yeah, there's only one meaning to life on planet Earth for me. It's very simple. To love and be loved. That's it. That's it. And I came to that realization, when I was taking a geology class at UC Santa Barbara. It's like, holy cow, the Earth is 4.6 billion years old. 4.6 billion. That's how long it took to make the planet. And dinosaurs ruled the planet for 150 million years. 150 million. Hello? And it took 6 million years for us to evolve into what we are at this very moment. 6 million years. And when we talk about civilized human beings, i.e. Egypt and Mesopotamia and all of that, Western civilization, a mere 5,000 years. It's like this on geologic time. If that's the case and you're aware of that, you have to ask yourself, what are we doing on the planet? What's the purpose? Why are we here? And if you believe in God, it's like, why is he putting us here? What are we supposed to be doing? Just to love and be loved. It's that simple. And the problem is that it's so complicated being on this planet and living on the planet. This planet will kill you if you don't watch out. This planet is very volatile. We have to deal with getting over just surviving and living on the planet. Surviving on the planet so that we can live. Really live, and life is so short. It's like, I just want it now. I'm an addict in recovery, and we want everything now. And I want to live a life of spirituality and serenity, and I want it now. And the only way I can get there to love and be loved is to stay in a program of recovery and to keep, reading things that are enlightening me, like Torah. Rabbi Mark told me, look, God gave us free will. Torah is the manual. And there's so much in there that resonates with me about just be a good person, do unto others as you would have them do to you. It's the golden rule. It's just simple.
I love that. I think all the Abrahamic traditions go together with that love and be loved. That's a great quote. And also, as an evolutionary biologist, I appreciated those references too. So here's an interesting anecdote and question from one person in the chat. And this is not exactly related to the book, which she says she absolutely adores. But when she was growing up as an only Jewish kid in school in Wisconsin, she got made fun of a lot. On one particular hard day, she turned on the TV and saw an ad that a TV movie was starting that co-starred Spock and Ingrid Bergman. As a massive Star Trek fan, she obviously was all in. That movie was A Woman Called Golda. And she immediately gained a huge role model, another Wisconsin girl, Golda Meir. Do you think that will ever be available for streaming?
Is it not? It should be. I got to check on it. I haven't seen that in a while. Actually, a complicated experience for my dad because the director did not cast him. Leonard was, it was like, I think it was through Harv Bennett. He produced it, and it was a part of luring Leonard to stay in the Star Trek. Dad wanted to do other things, so he got this role, and he had a lot of difficulty with the director. However, I think he did a great job. He worked with Judy Davis as the young Golda Meir, and he worked with Ingrid Bergman in her last role, and it was it's a phenomenal experience. I was invited to go with them while they were making that TV movie. Unfortunately, I was in law school, this happened a lot with my dad. I would be invited to go to Spain for something in the Great Barrier Reef or something. It's like, dude, I'm in school. I can't just split. And that one I really felt bad about having to miss. It was a great experience for him. Again, other than working with the particular director on that project. But he was very proud of the work he did. And I think he did great work. He was nominated for an Emmy Award for that, of which Ingrid Bergman won an Emmy Award.
That's great. I love the connections to other things outside of Star Trek here too. So another question in the chat. You mentioned your father's challenges as a father, but as a new grandfather, this person would like to know how he changed in his role as a grandfather relative to how he was before.
How my dad changed?
Yeah.
Is that the question?
Yeah.
Well, when I was estranged from my dad, he was not doing well with the kids. That was an estrangement period with them. That was a very difficult time with them. When things came around with me, with my dad and myself, then things started to turn around with my kids and my dad as well. And I talked about my dad and Jonah. My dad gave my daughter Maddie her first break in Hollywood. She went to Bard College in upstate New York. My daughter was a very good student, and she wanted to be in the industry. And through the connection of J.J. Abrams, she got a job on Person of Interest, which was shooting in New York. And she worked as a PA and worked her way out. That PA is like working your way up from the bottom, production assistant. And so that was really wonderful that he was able to open the door for her. And I think he was very proud of her trajectory. And look, my dad later on in life was not the same person he was when I was growing up. He said this himself. His priority was never family in the beginning. It was his career and surviving. Before Spock came along, it was like, I got to make money today to pay the bills. I mean, my dad was all about money, and the odd jobs. I remember the jobs that he did. It was later in life when he was semi-retired that he changed his priorities. And he said this in an interview. His priority became family, and that's why he was really ready and able and susceptible to change and to accepting my amends to him and making his own living amends to me. I mean, things really turned around later in life for him.
We actually have an update from somebody else in the chat about the previous question. That apparently a woman called Golda is available on Amazon for $3.50.
There you go.
There you go. There's a way to get it. They have something else in there, but we can't put it in something that's being recorded. They had another outlet too. I think we may have gotten through all the questions. I'll just ask you a general last one. Oh, actually, no, one just came in. You mentioned studying Torah and teaching writing. What are the kinds of stories that gravitate towards you?
That I gravitate towards? Oh, I don't know. I'm a sucker for romantic, stories. I love things like, epics that have a really romantic driving force to them. For some reason, that really appeals to me. The two things that I love to watch over and over are things like, there's three movies actually, and it's Last of the Mohicans with Daniel Day-Lewis and Madeline Stowe. It's amazing. Their relationship is amazing in that. Braveheart between Mel Gibson and Catherine McCormick. I mean, I know Mel. We have some problems with Mel in terms of his socio-political outlook. Yeah, but the film is amazing. Dances with Wolves. I think it's Mary McCormick and Kevin Costner. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that, when you have a kind of a really good relationship thing going on that's driving the epic quality of the movie, that is something that is of great interest to me. I love that kind of stuff. And in terms of like Torah, one of my favorite passages in Torah is really has to do with family, is when Judah is confronted with Joseph as this Egyptian minister, and that he wants to keep the youngest brother as collateral. Some of you may know what I'm talking about. It's like, the rest of you can go, leave your youngest brother Benjamin with me, his full brother, and the rest of you get the hell out of here. And Judah stands up and says, no, we're not doing that anymore. We're not breaking up the family. I love that kind of thing. That's really inspirational. That's really what it's about. It's like, yeah, the family stays together, make amends, try to get along. That kind of stuff is something else I gravitate towards.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for all these things. Before you go, do you have any last words besides love and be loved, which was a wonderful to have? Any last words for the broader group?
Live long and prosper.
Ah, Excellent. Very appropriate. Thank you so much, Adam. Really appreciate it. Thank you for the book. Thank you for the time. And just thank you for all you do for the community all the time.
Thank
Really
you,
appreciate
Mohammed. I really appreciate it. A great job in running this session. I really, really appreciate your questions.
My pleasure. And credit to the audience for most of those questions. So thank you. I think other folks, oh, I love that. I love those there. Do you have others too?
That's all I have in front.
Oh, okay. Fair
And then,
enough.
of course, my favorite picture of all time, me with
Oh,
Spock.
I love that.
Cosplay, the first cosplay, the first Trekkie. It's proof right there. July 1966. That's the proof.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. That's great. Actually, how old were you in that picture? Just curious.
I was 9 years old.
9 years old. Excellent, excellent. Let me give also a big shout out to Joyce Gordon, and Dora from the Jewish Book Council for all their work they did in putting this series together. Thank you so much, and we appreciate everybody being here.